Welcome to How to Be a Person, a podcast about life with me, your host, Giuliano. Andrew, what's up, my friend? Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. I know when you reached out and you were telling me about, some of what you do, I was kind of excited to hear about it. I think over the last few years, I've focused more like on my health, and I also have been more like kind of open to just different perspectives on health. And I'm also very much like a do-it-yourself type of person. Like, there's a lot of things that are taught and a lot of things that were told. And then there's other things that we can find all over the place, right? And I guess what I mean by that is that like there's a lot taught in school, right? There's a lot of things that's like, hey, if you have a degree, then this is what it means. Versus, I remember, one of the things you said was how many books you read, and so I was like, okay, I'm really interested to hear what this guy has to say. So let's, for anybody that's listening that doesn't know what the heck I'm talking about, tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, well, one point before I do that you sort of highlighted is like information overload is so real right now. And I think a lot of people get super disenfranchised when they're dealing with anything that relates to their health because they go online or they go to their primary care. They come away feeling like, man, do I have to be on 4 medications? And then they go online on social media and it's like one person's telling them they need to like take these 10 supplements, another's being like, you need to go carnivore. Another's like, never do this. So that is a very real phenomenon that everybody's dealing with, is all this information and feeling like, what the hell? Like, what am I actually supposed to be doing? So a little bit about my background. I originally was like, I have an economics degree. I worked in the social impact space and I was at a bunch of different tech startups in the education space too. And my health ultimately played its card and like derailed my career because I had all of these injuries. I grew up with a ton of chronic inflammation. I had sinus infections all the time. I got my adenoids removed.
Okay.
Fast forward in my mid-20s, I got multiple knee surgeries, multiple hip surgeries, and I was a college athlete feeling like,
whoa,
what is going on? Like, why am I breaking down at what most people would consider to be like a really young age, right?
Yeah.
Like mid-20s, you should be like really just living life to the fullest.
Yeah.
And so my life started to get completely derailed by my health. And anytime I went to the healthcare system, it was another surgery or another medication or something that was inevitable. And so I just felt like my world was closing in on me. And fortunately, I had a friend that let me live with him after my second hip surgery. I was completely bedridden. And in his extra bedroom, there was absolutely nothing. Like it might as well have just been a bed and like 4 corners of the room.
Yeah.
And so my choice was like, I can sit on my phone the whole time. I had my computer there. Thankfully, I was working remote, so I could still get work done. But even that was really tough. I turned to reading. And so I just started to read health books and I started to try and figure out like what is going on in my body that is causing all this inflammation, that's causing all these injuries. And that just sent me on an absolute rocket ship of learning about the body and how it works. And then, I mean, everything from like exercise physiology to more like biological elements of inflammation to neuroscience and psychology. So anyway,
and did you have like no experience in any of these things prior?
None.
Okay.
None. But for the last 10 years, I've probably been eating like 30 to 40 health books per year. Just finding these new things. I really value different opinions, again, because you got information overload everywhere.
Yeah.
And so I've started to value, you made the point about like, we go to school, we kind of learn what to think. I'm all about how to think about your health.
Yeah.
Like when I work with clients, it's less about here, you need to be doing this, this, and this. It's more like, let's create an active hypothesis for what's going on in your body. And then let's test different things to figure out what's going to work best for you because everybody's completely different.
Yeah.
So yeah, my background.
Dude, wait, hold on. Before you go on though, that makes so much sense. Like what you were, because of what you were talking about before with information overload, this is a conversation I've had with like other guests before as well, that like, it's almost hard to know like what's even real anymore, like at all. because there's so many things that like we just grew up being told, and then they just change it and they're like, oh no, actually it's the opposite of that. And you're like, wait, what? Like
Yeah.
I grew up my whole life thinking that this was the case, but now this is the case. And then even things like, just in general, like there's going to be like 5 different viewpoints on the same subject, and every person that you hear talk about it is going to be just as convicted that their side is correct. And you're like, bro, how do you know what's right? And obviously that's on like every topic, but especially when it comes to health, you just feel like, well, I just don't know anymore. Like you just kind of like throw your hands in the air and you're like, I don't know. And so what you said, how to think as opposed to what to think, makes so much sense, because it's like, okay, you know what? Screw what everyone is saying you're supposed to do. Let's just figure out what works for me. Because even though there might be, this is proven to work with this person, or maybe this person has some anecdotal evidence to work for them, or this worked against them, or whatever it might be, it's like, well, I could just test it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I fully resonate with that. It's funny. There was a video that went mega viral a couple weeks ago. It was called like the time traveling nutritionist or something.
Okay.
And it's like somebody walks into a kitchen and they're like, listen, don't eat red meat. Like you need to be eating wheat bread. And then they like leave, and then the time travel happens. And then they come back and they're like, listen, you need do not eat the yolks of the eggs. And it happens like 4 or 5 times where finally they come back and they're like, make sure you're eating only meat, no bread. And by the end, it's so funny because it's just so real that you're like, well, especially if you talk to, like when I talk to parents or folks that are, decades older than me, a lot of times it's like, man, I've heard this 4 times already that I need to be doing this. I need to be doing this. I shouldn't be doing this. So.
Yeah, no, it's totally true. And for me, I've always been, it's funny because you talk about like, testing it and experimenting. And for me, that's how I feel like I've been my whole life with everything, right? Like that's just what I do for work, or what I do for fun, or like my eating habits or exercising. Like I've always just like been the type of person who's just going to like try a million different things. And I've been vegan, I've done vegetarian, I've done carnivore, I've done like, I mean, honestly, like 10 more, right? Like I literally have just like tried so many different things. And what's hilarious is that all of them tend to work, right? For weight loss, but also just for feeling better. Like there's none of those that I did and I was like, oh my God, I felt like shit. Like, no, all of them I kind of was like, hey, I feel pretty good doing this. So it's kind of funny that like there really are all of these different like paths that you can go. And ultimately, like some of them are going to benefit you, some of them aren't. But also just depends on you as a person, right? Sometimes it's like, oh, that just doesn't fit into my lifestyle, or maybe something about your makeup makes it that thing doesn't make you feel good, or that happens to give you more energy than this other thing, or whatever,
Yeah, absolutely. I went through the same journey where I've done like all of the top 10 most popular diets.
Yeah.
As you said, I got results for each of them, although the results were a little bit different. And that's what led me to be like, okay, I solved this problem. And like, now I'm having this problem. So it's really like, I had to think like a scientist of like, okay, this is my active hypothesis. Okay, I've proven this out. If, it's been falsified and I know this works for me, but this other thing seems to pop up. And so you go through this process of experimentation that I think everybody should go through, right? A lot of people, all of us, myself included, want to outsource our thinking to others, which is completely fine in certain aspects of your life, right? Like in the world, in your career, there's always going to be moments where you're like, this is outside my circle of competence. I have to outsource this because it would take me 10 times longer than somebody that knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
But when it comes to your health, you do have to have some degree of awareness so that you can track this specific thing made me feel this way. This made me feel this way. You don't have to know exactly what choices, like which variables to change, but you're the only one in your body that can say, did I wake up feeling rested this morning? Right?
Yeah, no, it's a great point, man. It's funny because you know what, when you talk about outsourcing your thinking, I think of like a mechanic, right? Like when something's wrong with your car, you just bring it to the mechanic and you're like, well, the reason why having a good mechanic is such like a prized thing for people is because you don't know who you can trust, right? You're like, I'm trusting you that you're like not scamming me, that you're just like, you're actually going to fix what's wrong with this and you're going to charge me a fair price, right? Like that's why it's like such a big deal if you have a good mechanic.
Yeah.
And the thing is what like, so that's, I think just for people listening, that's a good example of like outsourcing your thinking, right? Like I don't for me to understand a car enough to be able to fix whatever's going on it's just not worth my time, right? It's like, it's easier to just pay someone else to do it. That's outsourcing our thinking. But I've been thinking about this for a while, that like when it comes to our health, we want to do that, right? Because we feel like, oh, I don't know enough, right? I'm not a doctor. I didn't go to medical school, all these things. And so we tend to like, well, hey, I'm just going to go to the doctor and outsource it to them. When in reality, like what you're talking about is like, you are the only one that lives in your body. And ultimately, even if like someone is like super, educated and all of those things, ultimately, and I don't know if you would agree with this or not, but this is what I believe, is that you are ultimately going to know what is best for you. Like it, and whether or not that is the case, it's ultimately your responsibility what you choose. So even if you go to a doctor and you say, tell me what you think is best, in the end, you have to make the decision and you have to be responsible and you have to live with the consequences, right? It's your
Yeah,
body.
completely. I think another way to say it is that not necessarily you're going to know what's best, because there are going to be others that might be able to shed light on certain things you
Yeah.
should try, but you are going to know what works most effectively because
Yeah.
you're the only one that lives in your body and experiences that.
Yeah.
Using your mechanic analogy, even though you want to go to a mechanic, you still have to recognize like, oh man, there's that clicking sound. I
Mm,
need to go to the mechanic. If you don't have that awareness and don't listen to the sounds your car or your body is making,
yeah.
you're going to go to the mechanic and he's going to be like, hey, what's been going on? You're like, I don't really know. Right. So
Yeah.
you do have to have some degree of awareness for.
Yeah. You know what it makes me think of too is like with the so sorry, I just compare a lot of like to the doctor. Right? I think about going to the doctor and how many people have had the experience where they go to the doctor and it's like really rushed and you kind of just are giving them like bare bones of what's happening. They're like, "Oh yeah, that's this. Here you go, blah blah blah, fixed." And I'm thinking like if I went to the mechanic and I was just barely kind of telling them what was going on and they just started assuming, "Oh, okay, yeah, no, it's probably this thing. We're just going to go ahead and fix it." Um, but that's not the thing. It's like you want it to be thorough, right? You want to be like, hey, this is what's going on. And they go, okay, well, let us take a look at it. We'll see what's wrong. And then we'll come back to you and like confirm like, hey, this is what we're noticing. So you probably heard this noise, but are you also experiencing this as well? Oh yeah, that is what's happening. Okay, perfect. So that does confirm that is what's going on here. So let's see what we can do. And I think like for a lot of people, the experience going to the doctor tends to be more of like this kind of not, and it's not on purpose, I would say, or like the intention of the doctor, but they just have a lot of work to do, right? They have a lot of patients to see. And because of that, it ends up being this kind of like, at least that's been my experience. And I'm assuming other people's experience as well, that sometimes it just feels like, oh, okay, yeah, it's probably this. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't feel like we talked about this enough. Like, I don't feel like we got deep enough into this for you to really know what's going on, you know?
Yeah, no, completely. And to your point, I mean, it's not the fault of the doctor necessarily. Like I have a ton of family members that are in healthcare. My wife's
Yeah.
a PA, my
Yeah.
father-in-law is a doctor, my sister's a doctor,
Yeah. There you
and
go.
they'll tell you first and foremost, like they're some of the people I know that have hearts of gold, right? They're
Yeah.
always trying to help people. But when you have 7 minutes or like 15 minutes max with a patient, because that's all that insurance will cover, what are you going to do? It's like you can't
Yeah.
really realistically talk them through all the little variables or ask all the right questions to get the data
Yeah.
that will allow you to prescribe the right eating plan or exercise plan. And unfortunately, I think a lot of folks that work in traditional medicine feel a little bit like, well, even if I spent that time, are you really going to listen? Because there's no real
Mm,
accountability there. And so it just becomes like, why don't you try the GLP-1s or take this blood pressure
yeah.
medication? And so it's really not necessarily the fault of the individuals. I think the system itself is just structured in a way
Mm,
where the patient just kind of gets the short end of the stick. And
yeah.
with how many health issues so many people are dealing with from our food system and a whole variety of other things, it's hard to do
Yeah.
anything in 15 minutes.
So I was just having a conversation with someone else about this recently, not on the podcast, but just in real life. um, and so I'm kind of curious because like you have experience essentially on both sides of this, right? Like you're not a doctor, but you have people in your family that are doctors. And for you, like on your end of it, what you seem to be doing is like this other side of it. First of all, what I'm curious of is like your wife, the people in your family, how do they feel about the approach that you're taking?
I think, I mean, there's two things that are true, right?
Okay.
Like many of them wish that they could give the level of attention that I do to clients to
Mm,
their own patients,
okay.
but they recognize that that's not the reality. So it's like,
Yeah.
this is what I think should be true, but this is what's actually true. And so the only thing I can do is recommend a blood pressure medication or a GLP-1, right?
Mm,
But I think what some of them do really well is like, let's say a patient comes in, they're 20 pounds overweight. And they're like, I know I just need to like get into a good routine with my eating or my exercise habits. One thing that I know, at least my wife does really well, is like, you could go on a GLP-1, right? But that does not take away the fact that you need to fix your lifestyle in
mm,
order to maintain those results and achieve optimal health and live the longest, happiest life, right?
yeah.
GLP-1 might help you drop the 20 pounds, but in order to keep those off, you're not going to be like injecting yourself or popping a GLP-1 for the rest of your life. Like nobody wants to
Yeah.
do that. It's like one way to get to a specific outcome, but if you want to keep that outcome, you have to make the lifestyle changes too. So then it becomes
Mm,
so, anyways, to short answer your question is a lot of them are pretty good about accepting that there are multiple truths and there's
mm,
reality and there's what they believe ought to be
okay.
true, like the idealistic
Yeah.
vision of it. But
So follow-up question then,
yeah,
just because we haven't gotten into it too much, but I have another thing I want to talk about with this situation before we keep going. But with this specifically, like when you are working with people and you're talking about this stuff and you're like examining their health, is it like where like the direction they end up going? Is it, sometimes it's the conventional route, sometimes it's more of like some alternative medicine route. Is that the case?
yeah. So most clients come to me
Yeah.
have a chronic condition or a very clear, at least surface level outcome they're trying to achieve. And
Mm,
in many cases, they're already on a medication
mm,
or two. And so
okay.
they might come to me and be like, listen, I know I have high blood pressure and this medication is helping me in the short term. How do I structure my life to get off of this so I don't have to be taking a
Mm,
pill? There are some crazy stats out there about the number of prescription medications that people, at least in the US, are taking. I want to say it's like 70% of people over 65 are on a medication.
wow.
Um, that's directionally correct, not perfectly accurate, but
Sure. Sure.
the numbers are staggering how many people are on prescription medications, even at a
Yeah.
pretty young age.
Mm,
So a lot of people do come to me and the first thing we do is like a lifestyle audit. So
mm,
I don't come in and prescribe an exercise routine or nutrition and meal plan or stress management strategies without first just trying to get to know people to understand where are you at,
yeah.
where are you trying to go, and what have you tried? Because you
Mm,
made the point earlier, it doesn't matter if something like running would get somebody results. If it's something that they can't stick to because they don't like to run, then that's off the table. It has to be
yeah.
something that they can really enjoy and stick to because that's how habits are solidified for life.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Okay. So a couple of follow-up questions about what we were talking about. And I'm really curious to ask you because, like I said, you are kind of on this one end where you're, helping people and you're like going like this kind of alternative route as opposed to just going to the doctor, but you also are connected with people very closely, right? Family members who
Yep.
are part of that system. Because I was just having this conversation with someone else that like it feels like there's a lot of things that are really awesome about that system, right? Like if I get into a car accident, there's like they can very much help me not die, which I'm super grateful for. But then there's other parts of that system that I feel like are really broken. And so there's a couple things. First of all, like when we think of like a medical doctor, right? That's like having to do with like medicine. So like their primary tool when you go to them is to prescribe medicine. Is that correct?
Yeah. So modern medicine is really um, like pathology, meaning like the study of disease. So, in other words, modern medicine is really good at treating acute conditions, really
Mm.
bad at treating chronic conditions.
Interesting. And so when you are going to a doctor for a chronic condition, you tend to gonna be prescribed a medication, which okay, fine, might be helpful. But the point is that like that is most likely the direction it's going to go. It's not necessarily going to be something that's going to like alleviate the actual underlying issue.
Right. If it's a chronic condition that's taking place over time,
Yeah.
basically the definition of chronic,
Yeah.
it can't really be treated, or the most efficient way to treat it is not with the same type of treatment you would take for an acute condition, right? Like
Yeah.
if you were to get an infection, or you come down with a virus or something, and you're given a medication that then destroys that virus, allows your body to
Yeah.
fight it off. That would be an example of treating like an infectious disease with an acute focus.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense.
So
Um,
modern medicine's great at that. Like you said, if I get into a
yeah.
car accident, if I break my leg, like by all means, do not give me some herbs and spices. Like take me to the hospital and be
Yeah.
operated on if I need to be, right? But
Yeah.
then in other scenarios, it's really important that people recognize like there might be ways that you can start to alleviate some of the symptoms, but if you're really trying to address the root cause for chronic issues, most of the time it comes back to lifestyle inputs.
It's pretty interesting. It makes you wonder if like there's a need for that that break off to happen. There to be an acknowledgement, like a widespread acknowledgement of that like, hey, look, this is great. Like we can't deny that this is really great for acute things, but for chronic stuff, like we're not qualified, you know? And instead of
Yeah,
trying to be like, hey, we're gonna do everything we can to, create medications to help with this stuff, it's like, okay, yeah, that's fine. That's good that it's there. And like you said, it might help in the short term, but ultimately there needs to be like an acknowledgement that like that's not what this is for. Like for long-term
yeah,
stuff, you have to change your lifestyle, and we're referring you over to this industry, all right, like this like aspect of it, instead of
yeah.
it being like, yeah, keep coming to us, we'll keep giving you medication.
Absolutely. And I mean, I have to tip my cap. There are people out there that are very outspoken, like
Yeah.
people that come from traditional medicine that are very outspoken about the need to shift our focus. I
Yeah.
mean, some of them that come to mind, Peter Attia talks all the time about healthcare 3.0, which is basically a preventative approach to
Mm,
chronic disease. Because, I mean, he'll say explicitly, I think he'd agree with me that the modern medicine or healthcare system is not great at treating
yeah.
chronic disease.
Yeah.
So people like Peter Attia, Mark Hyman's been doing a lot as far as like trying to go to Capitol Hill and actually
Mm,
get policy changes made. I mean, there's a lot of folks that are, Huberman does a good job. Rhonda Patrick does a good job. Some of these
yeah.
people are like, they could be sailing off into the sunset, working in modern medicine or science and research and
Yeah.
making tons of money behind the scenes. But a lot of them are just super outspoken. They're willing to go against the grain. They're willing to say like this system needs to be changed. So those are a lot of the people that I look to as really good examples of the future of what this, whatever this looks like from a
Yeah.
health
Yeah.
standpoint.
No, it's a good point. Okay, so this is another question, and you may or may not know this, but the conversation that was being had was like about the system in general and the way it's set up, and how you were talking about insurance and stuff. Um, like from what I understand, right, there's going to be some hospitals, some doctors that operate in like a nonprofit situation, but then there's others that are, it's just a business, right? And
Yeah.
like ultimately, like they're going to keep making money if you keep coming to them. And I mean, first of all, like before we continue, is that the case?
Yes. I mean, even talking with my wife, there are certain metrics that as a health system or a clinic, they need to hit as far as number of people, yeah, in
Oh
order to
God.
get certain insurance payouts. So again, it's not
Oh,
even their fault. It's the fact that
yeah.
insurance is like, listen, you need to bill 100 people for this blood pressure medication in order for us to give you the grant funding to pay your employees. So, and that's like a really rudimentary way
Wow.
of explaining it.
Yeah, yeah, but okay, so that's true. Okay, so it's true then. Because I feel like it's important, because sometimes when I talk about this, like I think, it's like, oh, well, because look, it's like what you said, right? You have people in your family that you're like, they're great people. Like, and I want it to be clear, like, most doctors that I've met are like really good people and just want to help people. What I'm talking about is the system, like the way that the system is set up, and also understanding that, like, even if, right, your doctor's like the best person you've ever met, like you cannot deny that like financial incentives, not to make a ton of money, but just to make a living, are going to affect the decisions that someone makes. It's going to affect the way that they do their job. And again, this is not like a dig at them. It's just like the way that the system is set up. And so what I was getting at is that, like, for me, I'm always looking at incentives. And I'm not saying just financial incentives. What I mean is that, are the incentives aligned? Right. So like if I'm a patient, ultimately I want to get better over time. And if the system is not set up to incentivize the business to accomplish the same thing, then our incentives are not aligned. And therefore, like, my interests are not in line with this business, right? And in this conversation that I'm telling you about, we were talking about, like, well, what's the solution? And I was, I've come across some doctors who will have like like it's a private practice, and they'll have like literally just like a membership where you pay every month, and it's like however so often they come and do a physical, and if you need something, in the meantime, you can go to them. And to me, I'm like, well, that actually kind of makes sense, because my goal is to not have to see the doctor.
Right.
And if the doctor sees me less, they have a higher profit margin. Right. So I'm like, so technically, right, unless you're a bad doctor and you're just like not seeing patients.
Right.
But then those people will leave, right? Those people. So it, like, the business kind of like, it solves that problem on its own. So they go, oh, okay. Like, yeah, I want to go see this doctor. He's a really good doctor and I'm still healthy. And the doctor goes, hey, my patients are healthy. So I get really good profit margins.
Yep. Yep.
And because they know that I care about them and I'm not just like shirking them, and that's why I'm not seeing them. But because I help them to like live a better life and they're healthier, I get rewarded for it. I get higher profit margins for that. So yeah, that was the conversation that we had. I know that doesn't solve every issue, but it's something,
I mean, I'll give you another crazy example is
Hey, it's Giuliano. I'm just popping in here to say how much I appreciate you being here listening, and that I hope you're enjoying the show. The more support that the show gets, the more episodes can be produced. If you can only support by sharing it with others or leaving a review, I appreciate that so much. But if you're the type of person who would like to support the show directly, you can do so by visiting howtobeaperson.co and click support the show, or just click the link in the show notes. Every bit of support means the world to me, and no matter how you choose to support the show, I appreciate you being here listening. I love what I do, and it's because of people like you who listen to the show that I get to keep doing it. Thanks again so much for being here. All right, back to the episode.
my wife does telemedicine one
Okay.
day per week. And she has gotten chewed out a couple times for calling patients on the phone because they can't bill as much to insurance without video calls. But she's
What?
like, and she's sitting there like exhausted. She's 6 months pregnant. We have a 2-year-old. And
Yeah.
she's sitting there like trying to reach all of her patients just to check in and really do a thorough job. Like, she loves her job, but it's like,
Yeah.
really, like even calling a patient, she's getting chewed out because it's like,
Yeah.
listen, no, you need to be on video calls. It's the only way. You need to be 20
Mm.
video calls per day on your telemedicine day in order for us to hit the insurance payout. So I mean, your point
Wow.
is,
Wow.
could not be more accurate. The Charlie Munger quote always comes back to me of like, show me the incentive and I'll tell you the outcome. The
Oh,
outcome is that,
wow. Great. I didn't know I agreed with Charlie Munger. That's awesome.
no, I mean, he's brilliant, but the outcome, I mean, there's two things going on. Number
Yeah.
one, patients are not getting the best possible care, right? Number
Yeah.
two, providers are getting completely burnt out
Mm.
because they're being required to do all these things. And frankly, I think that's why a lot of people, or a big chunk, are leaving traditional healthcare in favor of even going to like pharmaceutical companies or doing concierge services, like you just mentioned, where it's
Yeah.
like, you pay a monthly fee, we'll help you whenever we need. But quite frankly, as long as you keep paying the monthly fee, like, we don't want to see you if we don't have to,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Exactly. Well, and there was one of the doctors I came across that was doing that was essentially like, they also said that they have like special rates worked out for like specialists that they know, like, in their network. So it's kind of like, hey, even if you have to see a specialist, we have like special rates worked out too. So it's not like the end of the world, because a lot of people are like, well, but what if I need a specialist or something? So anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting. But so sorry, we kind of went on this like wild thing about why the normal system is wrong. But I would love to hear more about exactly like what you do and how you help people.
Yeah, well, it's funny when you just brought that up. I started thinking to myself, I've actually structured my own business and my approach to coaching in that way, where
Oh.
I don't pay, like, clients don't pay me per session. They basically sign up for a set
Mm.
time period, whether it's like 4 months or 6 months or a full year. And we're working together to achieve certain outcomes, right?
Yeah.
And those outcomes might change throughout the program. It might be like 3 months in, they're like, my blood pressure's back to normal, but I would like to lose another, 20 pounds. And so they're sort of driving Whereas I am, sitting in the passenger seat with the map being like, you know what, let's take a left here. Let's try this.
Mm,
And, doing a lot of work behind the scenes.
yeah.
But the outcome is the North Star that we're traveling towards, right? It's not about like, I need you on a weekly call every week. By all means, like some clients really like that accountability, and we have a private channel. So we're always, checking in, especially with new habits. But that outcome is what we're seeking, right? And
Mm,
so the less effort that they have to put in, the better. Like,
yeah.
most people I work with are like, if I can snap my fingers and lose the weight or drop the blood pressure or, get my cholesterol in a normal range, like that's what I want. And so it's a matter of how do we figure out the least amount of friction that will get
Mm,
you there and keep you there. In other words, like what are the
yeah.
high leverage changes you can make
I
that
love
will
that.
lift results?
Yeah, no, I love that, man. It's funny because I feel like that's the approach I've taken as well. So I've coached in a lot of different spaces, like in sales and in relationships now, and like life coaching and stuff like that. And I feel like that's ultimately what it is. I think sometimes we believe that like life has to be this like really hard thing. And ultimately it's like, well, really, when you find what works for you, regardless of what we're talking about, relationships,
Yeah.
just in general, or your health, when you're able to like experiment and figure out what works for you, like you said, there's going to be something that's going to have like a really high leverage, and then you just lean into that thing. And so I think that's really cool. That's the approach you take.
Yeah. And that's also, I mean, I'll do a little shameless self promotion right
Yeah.
now. The book that I just published, The Longevity Lifestyle, the
Yeah.
first section of the book, the first chapter is on thinking like a scientist. And it's exactly what we're
Mm,
talking about creating a set of hypotheses for yourself and experiments, and then really using like systems thinking and keeping a really open mind to apply different things that you think might move you towards that outcome and then modify those as you go based on the results you're getting.
mm,
So I think regardless of where you're at, even if you're in the best possible health, there's always like there's always a direction that you're moving in.
yeah.
Right? Like most people that are in really good health, they're like, well, I really want to prevent chronic disease. I want to live as long as possible to, spend time with my kids and grandkids. I don't want to experience joint pain. I want to sleep fully through the night. So there's always things that we're trying to achieve and maintain with our health. And I think it's important that people don't forget that. There's no
Yeah.
real, you know, flag that you're planting in the ground with a sudden.
Done. I'm healthy.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, there are certainly checkpoints like weight
Yeah.
loss or getting other metrics into healthy ranges. But even when you're in your healthiest, there's still going to be a direction you're moving in. And that's important.
Yeah, yeah. Can you break that down a little bit? So for someone who's listening and is like, what is hypothesis? What is systems thinking? Can you like break it down a little bit more?
Yeah. So a hypothesis is basically a theory of what you think is going to work. So let's use weight loss as a common example. You're trying to lose 10 pounds. A hypothesis would be I think that the best way for me to lose weight is going to be to cut out carbohydrates because I believe I'm overeating carbohydrates as a source of energy, and that's then getting stored as fat. And so it's sort of just this theory that you have that by doing this one thing, I'm going to get this other thing. And then
Mm,
you test that theory. And if it doesn't start to get you move you in the right direction, it may not be the right theory, right? There may
yeah,
be a chronic stress element that's leading you to be overweight. There could be a sleep deprivation element. There could be just a complete lack of movement in your life.
mm,
So that's in simple terms how you would approach that of
yeah,
here's this theory of how I'm going to get to point B from point A and then testing that and changing it.
yeah. What's funny is that I think a lot of people could, I mean, obviously, I believe a lot of people could benefit from that type of thinking. What's really funny is that I think it's natural for us to do that. Like, I think a lot of people try a lot of different diets, but the issue is that they're not approaching it as an experiment, right? As kind of like, hey, let me see how this works for me, learn from it, and either continue doing it because it's working or figure out what I need to adjust going forward in order to continue to reach my goal. What ends up happening is people go, oh, I try this diet and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, or maybe they gain the weight back or whatever it was. And they go, oh, that didn't work. Oh, that sucks. And so they're just kind of like floundering and they end up trying this thing and trying this thing when ultimately it's like that's, to be honest, that's just life in general with everything. Like you
Yeah.
have to kind of just keep experimenting, but you have to learn from it. Right. And if you go into it knowing it's an experiment, not just going, oh, the hope this is a thing that works, right? But you go into it as an experiment and learn from it and build on it. It's like, well, then you can improve. And that's on in any area of your life.
Yeah. I mean, the analogies fits perfectly with a career, right? If you
Yeah.
have somebody that decides to, they're sitting down, they're trying to figure out how can I make money? And they're sitting and they're just thinking and thinking and asking themselves, like, I don't know what I'm actually going to like doing. The answer is just try something,
Yeah, exactly.
collect some data.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I see a lot is, first of all, everybody wants to feel gratification and feel comfort. That's just
Yeah.
a universal human desire.
Hmm.
And I truly think that the ability to delay gratification and engage in forms of discomfort is a superpower in the modern age because we have so much stuff, or a lot of people have so much stuff at their fingertips.
Hmm.
I have a lot of people that come to me and we'll do an audit and they'll be taking 20 to 30 different supplements. And when I go through and ask them why specific supplements, I don't know. I saw it on social media. Somebody told me that I was going to get, like, this was going to burn 5 pounds of belly fat. And so you made an interesting point about the fact that people don't necessarily allow that test or that hypothesis or experiment to play out before
Hmm.
deciding whether or not it's actually making a difference for them.
Yeah.
I see that a lot. Supplements is like the prime example
Mm.
where if you're going to try a supplement or take a supplement, you should be really clear on why you're taking that. There should be a specific outcome or a reason backed by data for taking that. And if you're going to do it in a way where you're going to track it like a true experiment, you don't just want to layer on another supplement.
Yeah, exactly.
Because then you end up taking 20 different supplements, not losing the weight, and sitting there being like, I don't know why I'm taking these supplements. Somebody just told me at one point I should be taking this thing. I'm not really sure why. So I always tell people it's really good to just sit back from a supplement standpoint and reevaluate every 6 months. What am I taking? How much money am I spending on this stuff? And why? What am I going for here?
Hmm.
So, and that's
Yeah.
with any habit, not just supplements, but
Yeah.
supplements is an easy example.
Oh, for sure. Oh, yeah. I mean, to be honest, I've done the same thing. But what I'll say is that, like, I feel like I have taken that scientific approach where it's like, okay, hey, I'm gonna take this one supplement, not add a bunch of other ones, and then. But I think the issue, and this is, I'm glad you're bringing this up, and this is part of what it is thinking like a scientist. Is like a scientist wouldn't just do the experiment and then be like, yeah, I guess we'll know at the end. Like you have to pick something to track, right? You have to be like, okay, hey, I'm doing this for this specific outcome. And the way I'm going to determine whether or not it works is by tracking X metric. And as you track it, you go, okay, cool. Yeah, it affected that metric exactly the way I thought it would, or it didn't, or it went in the opposite direction, or whatever the result is. But the point is that you have to have something that you're tracking. And again, like you said, you're not going to like be throwing all these extra variables in partway through the experiment.
Yeah, or at a minimum, you need to have a working, like, standing hypothesis. I really like the framing, and I talk about this in my book, that
Okay.
everything you believe is just a hypothesis. So
Mm.
I personally think that breathing air is, I need to breathe air. But if somebody comes to me and they're like, I've been surviving for 10 years without air, baby. This is great. I'm open to it. Tell me
Yeah,
how, right?
sure.
Like, it's a working hypothesis. And
Yeah.
so, to your point about testing things, some people might hear that and feel like, well, if I'm, even if I'm taking, back to the supplement example, if I'm taking 5 supplements, I'm not just going to be constantly testing for the rest of my life. But let's say I take a fish oil pill because I feel like, oh, these omega-3
Mm.
fatty acids are going to help my blood pressure. They're going to help with inflammation. And I do see that that improves my cardiovascular health. My joints feel better. I think more clearly. But then I'm not from there really testing it. I just have this standing hypothesis that
Yeah.
I've now moved things into a good range. And I believe that the fish oil is contributing to staying in that range. So I guess it's just to point out, people don't, if you feel overwhelmed,
Yeah.
like, do I really need to track everything? Is it that, like, my daily walk is keeping me alive, right? It's like having that as, at least if somebody were to ask you, why are you doing this thing? You should have a reasonable understanding or answer for that.
Yeah,
And that's
absolutely.
from a coaching perspective, that's part of the reason I lean really heavily into the education so that people
Mm.
come out of the program feeling like they really understand their metabolism, their habits, their motivation, all on a deeper level than they did when they started.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Well, and I'm glad you mentioned that too, because I could hear someone being like, "Well, I don't want to be testing and measuring for the rest of my life,"
Right.
because you
It's
don't have to.
so complicated. Exactly. It's that
Yeah,
we're talking about this on a very granular level, but it does
yeah,
not need to be super complicated. It could be as simple as I'm taking this thing or I'm doing this thing. Am I waking up and feeling more energy? Am I feeling generally better?
yeah.
Having that basic awareness of where you're at so that you do know when your car starts making noise, you need to take it to the mechanic.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, and same thing. It's like it doesn't have to be crazy too. If you're doing something for the purpose of losing weight, it's like you could literally just weigh yourself today and then do whatever you're doing or take whatever supplement you're taking, whatever. And the test is like 30 days from now you weigh yourself again. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
that's all it has to. It doesn't have to be anything crazy.
yeah, but that is another good point, which is when you are actually testing something, you do need to have a time frame and a
Yeah.
way of measurement or tracking just to say, okay, once per month, I'm going to step on the scale and see where I'm at. And then I think it's worth sitting down and evaluating, if I was up 5 pounds, if I was down 5 pounds, what's the active hypothesis or theory for
Mhm.
why that is?
Yeah. I like what you said about active, like a working theory kind of thing. Like I really like that in general because that's so I've gotten to this point where I tell people that like I'm always open to being wrong. And I've kind of like that's how I always phrase it. But I really, really like what you just said about it's like a working theory because that's really everything in life. Like you said, even the example, I think the breathing example is a really good one because it's something that everyone would just be like, of course you have to breathe. Shut up. Like
Yeah.
that's so stupid. And you're like, okay, that's fine. You can say that. But I mean, like you said, if someone actually came up and was like, I don't breathe, like I haven't breathed for 5 years, you'd be like, well, okay, maybe I'm wrong, like tell me, how are you doing this without breathing, And like that's really what I mean. Like when I'm like I'm always open to being wrong, it's like, hey, I have evidence for what I believe because that's why I believe it, right? Like so
Yeah.
far, this makes sense to me. And this is again all areas of my life. So far, this makes sense to me. But I'm always open to new information. And if that new information sheds some light or disproves something that I currently believe and I can see some evidence for it, and maybe I make the change and I notice a positive improvement, okay, then I'm very much open to that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think part of that is just being radically open minded.
Hmm.
I really like the term integrative thinking, which is actually the second chapter of my book, where I basically
Okay.
talk about like you're going to have truth number one and truth number two, or belief number one and belief number two. And both things can have elements of truth,
Hmm.
right? Like you might say, I survive because I breathe. Somebody else says, I survive because I don't breathe. And the truth is really like, you're surviving because you're inhaling oxygen. They're surviving because they are injecting oxygen.
Yeah, yeah.
The analogy kind of breaks down, but you get my point. Like,
Yeah, I get
oh,
it.
okay, there is an element of truth. And if two
Yeah.
people were debate on that subject, a lot of times it just gets totally lost in the sauce because they're like, well, I
Mm.
know you have to breathe. And the person's like, listen, I'm not breathing. You're not going to convince me. And so one thing that I think is really important is that concept of
Mm.
radical open-mindedness and accepting that for the most part, the world is not black and white. There are
Mm.
people out there that are extremely healthy that are vegan. There are people out there that are extremely healthy that are carnivore. Both of them could say to each other,
Yeah.
there's no way that you can be healthy with vegan. There's no way you can be healthy with carnivore. There are two truths. And
Yeah.
so just making that a general practice of open to hear any opinion and willing to update my own beliefs when new information comes across, I think that is another really big superpower in today's day and age where there's just so much information, there's so many strong beliefs. We're in the
Yeah.
most polarized political climate ever.
Yeah.
Um, really good book on this topic. I just want to give it a plug. Is
Yeah.
Adam Grant's book called Think Again. That is all about. He's a psychologist from
Yeah.
Wharton, and he's fairly popular. Really good writer, and his book is all about updating your thinking.
Who
And
is it by again?
Adam Grant,
Oh, I think I have read that book.
he's got a bunch of really good books, but that's one in
Yeah.
particular that focuses on that topic of just being willing to update your
Mm.
beliefs. And he does a really good job just going into like interesting studies and examples of people. One thing that really stood out to me is because I grew up outside of Boston.
Okay.
So the example was they asked Red Sox fans and Yankees fans how they felt about the other fan base. And
Yeah.
they basically like categorized the most used words. And the heat map
Mm.
of the words was identical, right? It was like they're assholes, they're like, impatient, they're annoying.
Yeah.
Like, and it was just the perfect example of like people's opinions completely dictating the way that they believe
Mm.
something based on their frame of reference or their perception of things.
Yeah, that is really interesting, and it's a good point, especially like you said, given the current political climate. I feel very strongly, like in agreement with what you said about the fact that there's a through line in everything that sometimes, a lot of times, people aren't seeing. Right? They're seeing like this side versus this side, when in reality, there's something in the middle that's tying all of this together, and we actually do agree. Like we do agree. It's hard to see it, but we do agree. And just like in health, right? If you get into a car accident, you can show up to a doctor who's never met you in his entire life, and he can fix you, right?
Mhm.
It's because there's a standard, right? Like all human bodies are the same. He doesn't have to be like, okay, well, let's try to figure out this body that just got in here and I'll see if I can save it. No, it's because there's a through line, right? Like everyone pretty
Yep.
much is made up the exact same way. And so they can fix everyone pretty much the same way. So if they know how to fix one person, they know how to fix everyone basically. And I think that's true in other areas as well. Even when it comes, like if we say, hey, all humans are the same physically, I think to a certain extent, the way we all think is the same as well. Like we like to think that we're all special and we think of things differently. I think there is a very, very strong similarity between everyone. But just like, I mean, I think a good example is like, if you have someone who's white, you have someone who's black, you have someone who's Asian, whatever, comes in to the hospital after an accident, that's irrelevant,
Yeah.
right? It's irrelevant. They're a human being and therefore they can be fixed, right? And I think it's the same thing, right? Like what if let's say you're talking about religion, right? It's like one person's Christian, one person's Buddhist, one person's Islam, right? They have all these different religions. It's like, yeah, but they're all the same, right? And same
Yeah.
thing with politically. Oh, you're this, you think this, you're on this side of the aisle, blah blah blah. It's like, yeah, but they're all just humans,
Yeah.
And I like the example you gave. It's kind of reinforced that for me.
Yeah. You know what that also brings up? This is like a topic that gets so beaten down, but like thinking in first principles, I
Okay.
find to be extremely helpful
Okay.
when it comes to finding stuff that is in mutual agreement.
Mm,
Meaning, like first principles is basically like the underlying theory or belief that you have that leads to something, right? So
yeah.
if you voted for a specific political figure, you probably didn't do it because you believed that, like somebody might be like, oh, you voted for this person because you believe that they're going to be the best leader or some,
Okay.
stupid example. But really the underlying belief is that you value one thing above everything else, and you believe that that political figure has the policy that's going to best serve that
Mm,
one thing. And so
yeah.
it can be really helpful when you're talking with somebody, like carnivore and vegan example, going back to that. Carnivore and vegan both would probably agree, or in many cases, they would agree that avoiding ultra processed food is going to lead to good
Yes.
health, right?
Yes.
So no matter what somebody believes and how different that is from your own beliefs, I find that to be really helpful of just like drilling down into like, okay, you're carnivore, but why? Like let's just but
Mm,
why? Just keep asking why until you get to like the most raw building block of that belief. And oftentimes that's really where the disagreement comes in, where it's like, well, I actually think that we don't need as much protein. That may be the actual argument between those two
mm,
groups.
yeah.
So I went off on a
Super
tangent there,
interesting.
but because I really feel like that is so important for drilling down and understanding your own beliefs and then
Yeah.
trying to understand other people's beliefs.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, I could definitely see, I mean, obviously we're talking about different subjects, but specifically when it comes to people's health, I can see how someone like, working with you when it comes to their health will help them get down, like you said, kind of like drill down to like, what is it that actually is like the issue here and what's going to give us the most leverage and what's the most, like you said, the most frictionless way of being able to put this into practice so we can get the results we want. Um, Andrew, this has been an awesome conversation, man. So for anybody that's listening, if they want to connect with you, or I know you mentioned your book, how can they connect with you? How can they get your book? All that stuff.
Yeah, so I just published my book a couple months ago. It's called The Longevity Lifestyle. It's on Amazon. My website is longevitylifestyle.me. And I'm Andrew Panella on all different social channels. I think my handle's like longevity edu or something like that, depending on the channel. But I post all the time on pretty much every channel about health and longevity and human performance. And I'm just trying to help people live their longest and healthiest and happiest lives. So I really appreciate you having me on, giving me a chance to just talk through some of this stuff. Obviously, as you can tell, I love this stuff. So
Yeah, I can tell. And I'm sure people listening can tell as well. And I think that's ultimately like what you're looking for when you want to work with someone on anything. So yeah, I hope people will check. I know I'm going to check out your book. I'm sold on it. So I'm going to add it to my cart. So make sure I buy it. But yeah, Andrew, this has been a great conversation, man. I really, really appreciate you coming on, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, thanks, Giuliano. You too.
Thanks for being here. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review or share it with someone who'd appreciate it. For everything I have to offer, visit howtobeaperson.co.